Today, the state of Illinois filed a lawsuit challenging Donald Trump's unlawful and unwarranted plans to deploy armed military troops to Chicago. There is no invasion here. There is no insurrection here. And local and state law enforcement are on the job and managing what they need to. Without my permission and against my vigorous objections, the president has federalized 300 Illinois National Guard military troops and hundreds of National Guard members from Texas, and he has ordered them to activate for duty in Illinois. I have called upon Governor Abbott to immediately withdraw his support for this decision and refuse to allow Texas National Guard members to be used in this way.
It remains paused. Appeals court rules National Guard can stay but not deploy in Chicago. A federal appeals court has just stepped in, ruling that National Guard troops can remain in Illinois, but they can't be deployed in Chicago. This decision effectively blocks President Trump's effort to support law enforcement and federal agents facing chaos during mass immigration operations. So, what does this mean for the rule of law, public safety, and the ongoing standoff between Washington and blue state governors? Let's break it down. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit issued what it called a mixed ruling. It allows National Guard troops to stay federalized, meaning they remain under federal command. But it blocks their actual deployment on the ground in Chicago. The order affects 200 troops from Texas and 300 from Illinois, who were mobilized to help secure federal property and immigration facilities after rising tensions and threats of violence. The case will continue through the courts, leaving law enforcement in a holding pattern. Let's remember why this deployment was even proposed. President Trump's administration said the National Guard was needed to protect ICE agents, federal workers, and American citizens during large-scale immigration enforcement. Cities like Chicago have long resisted federal cooperation on immigration, creating sanctuary zones where illegal immigrants often evade deportation. The White House argued that the Guard presence was about restoring order and enforcing the law, not politics. But Illinois officials quickly pushed back. Governor J.B. Pritzker called the move unlawful and accused Trump of trying to militarize Chicago. He and other state Democrats filed a lawsuit to stop the deployment, claiming there was no crisis or insurrection. However, critics argue that this kind of rhetoric ignores the violence, drug trafficking, and lawlessness that federal agencies have been trying to contain. And it raises a big question. Why block federal help when local law enforcement is stretched thin? While politicians debate, Chicago residents are living with the consequences. Protests near immigration facilities have turned violent. Businesses have been damaged, and law enforcement officers have faced serious threats. The National Guard was meant to back them up, not replace them. Now that support is on hold because of politics and courtroom drama. Before we move to what's next, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss updates on this developing story.
Today, the state of Illinois filed a lawsuit challenging Donald Trump's unlawful and unwarranted plans to deploy armed military troops to Chicago. There is no invasion here. There is no insurrection here. And local and state law enforcement are on the job and managing what they need to. Without my permission and against my vigorous objections, the president has federalized 300 Illinois National Guard military troops and hundreds of National Guard members from Texas, and he has ordered them to activate for duty in Illinois. I have called upon Governor Abbott to immediately withdraw his support for this decision and refuse to allow Texas National Guard members to be used in this way. Let me be clear. Donald Trump is using our service members as political props and as pawns in his illegal effort to militarize our nation's cities. I want to thank Attorney General Kwame Raoul and his staff, along with my general counsel, Ann Spillane, and our excellent governor's office legal team for working tirelessly for weeks now to prepare federal lawsuits in anticipation of this unconstitutional invasion of Illinois by the federal government. For weeks now, Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, and Gregory Bovino have brought their militarized CBP and ICE agents to the streets of Chicago to cause violence and chaos in this city. They need to stop inciting our city's residents. Since the beginning of this invasion, families have been snatched up off the streets or removed from their homes, zip-tied and detained for hours, including especially U.S. citizens and legal residents of our state. And in the words of CBP Chief Patrol Agent Greg Bovino, they're being chosen by how they look. Peaceful protesters have been hit with tear gas and shot with rubber bullets. Journalists simply reporting the facts on the ground have been targeted and arrested. The facts on the ground have been targeted and arrested. U.S. citizens, including children, have been traumatized and detained. This escalation of violence is targeted and intentional and premeditated. The Trump administration is following a playbook: cause chaos, create fear and confusion, make it seem like peaceful protesters are a mob by firing gas pellets and tear gas canisters at them. Why? To create the pretext for invoking the Insurrection Act so that he can send military troops to our city. He wants to justify and normalize the presence of armed soldiers under his direct command. I want to take you through the steps that he's taken to follow the playbook and show how it is playing out real time here in Illinois. When I first heard reports of Trump's plan to send armed military troops into our streets, more than 100 elected officials, business leaders, clergy, law enforcement, educators, and community organizations gathered on August 25th to send an unequivocal message to Donald Trump. We don't want troops on the streets of Chicago. There was never an insurrection or an invasion on the ground that justified the deployment of the military to our American city. We stood out there on a beautiful day at River Point Park to make that point. Donald Trump's deranged depiction of Chicago as a hellhole, a war zone, and the worst and most dangerous city in the world was just complete BS. He clearly has decided to declare war on a great American city that has the lowest homicide rate in 60 years, in a state that has record employment and near record tourism. And he's done it for some unspoken reason. I spent the days and weeks following that out and about in our communities, in Bronzeville, in Austin, in Little Village, Berwyn, South Shore, and others, walking and talking and listening to real Chicagoans and local business owners, something Donald Trump, Greg Bovino, Tom Homan, and Kristi Noem have never bothered to do. No insurrections, no invasions. The folks in the neighborhoods do not want armed troops marching in their streets. When it comes to public safety, they want civilian law enforcement when they need them, and jobs, and after-school programs for kids in the neighborhoods. They do not want Donald Trump to occupy their communities. Then the Trump invasion began. Since ICE and CBP announced their operations on September 8th, our people have been subjected to violence, intimidation, and harassment.
The court's decision keeps the deployment paused. For now, future hearings could determine whether President Trump's order stands or falls. But one thing's clear. The debate over federal versus state authority and how we keep American cities safe is far from over. So, to sum it up, the National Guard can stay in Illinois, but they can't do their job yet. The court's decision highlights the growing divide between Washington's push for law and order and local leaders who resist federal intervention. What do you think? Should the Guard be deployed to protect our cities, or should states have the final say? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay informed about the stories that the mainstream media often overlooks.